It's Denise Eckert from Calm Your Daily Stress podcast, and I'm here to introduce new techniques and ideas to lower the stress in your life so you can create a happier lifestyle. And today I've got Sue Willoughby. She's the founder of Willoughby Coaching, where she helps women over 40 break through personal barriers using the transformative power of equus coaching through deep nonverbal connections with horses. Sue helps clients gain insight into their communication and leadership styles. Raised by a single alcoholic parent, Sue learned resilience early, came out at 17, and overcame dark times to build a successful career. With a lifelong love of horses, she's crafted a coaching approach that inspires bold, authentic living. From being a DJ and stand-up comic to a private pilot, Sue embodies fearless living and is here to inspire you to do the same. Welcome, Sue.
Hi, Denise. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
And I'd love to hear what inspired you to do this type of work.
I say that I want to be the coach that I never had when I was growing up, or even in my young adult life. I didn't have any real guidance. I had to make my own. So in my corporate career, I was always in a leadership role. So I've always been in a leadership mentor kind of role, and coaching just came naturally to me. And the piece with the horses, they've just always been in my life. So it seemed like a natural progression, although not a straight line. I will say that.
How do you use horses to help women? What is the connection there?
The connection is that horses are very intuitive creatures. They will mirror our behavior. They can connect with our insides, meaning like our biorhythms, our breathing, our heart rate, all of that kind of stuff. And they can tell when we are being inconsistent with our insides and our outsides. So if we have some sort of a front that we're keeping up, which we all do on some level, horses can see right past that. And they don't care if you're afraid, if you're depressed, if you're whatever it is, they don't care. They just want to know that you're being congruent, because their whole being, their whole truth is to exist and to feel safe, whether it's in a herd, whether they're by themselves. And when you're interacting with a horse, you're part of their herd, right? So they don't judge, they don't lie, they keep you honest, which is the best way that I can put it. Because they're 1,200-pound big physical creatures, but like I said, they're prey animals. We're predators.
Now you've had an interesting career being a nightclub DJ and a stand-up comic. Now, how does this help you support and guide women to who are limiting themselves?
The way I grew up, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really have a comfort zone because I never knew what to expect. So my comfort zone was discomfort, which made me pretty independent and also very curious and also just fearless in a way that wasn't always healthy, I guess you could say. So I did try a lot of things, whether it be alcohol, drugs, all kinds of crazy stuff when I was younger. Yet I wasn't afraid to go out and try a new career because of my level of curiosity. If I wanted to learn to fly a plane, I did. If I wanted to be a DJ or a bartender or whatever, or drive in a demolition derby, I did, just because I could. And I guess part of me was, what could happen? What could be worse than something else that I may have been through? But it's just my level of curiosity. So I really try to encourage people to nurture that. And it's okay to be curious. Just because you try something new doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life. But just go out and explore new things, because you might hit on something that you're like, wow, that's a really cool thing. I just encourage people to be like, what's the worst that could possibly happen?
I love that because I sound a lot like you. Like I've actually, my background is aircraft mechanic,
Hmm.
framer, and I've always treated it like that. I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life, but I want to do this now.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we do create transferable skills. And I
Hmm.
find that's the biggest thing. You're opening strange doors and you're creating transferable skills. Doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
Working with women at, our age, What are the biggest things that you encourage women our age to do?
To embrace discomfort, because what it takes to get outside of your comfort zone is getting over that fear threshold. And I think most people, most women create that fear threshold, and it's huge. It's not, it's this giant brick wall that if I go beyond that, something terrible is going to happen. People are going to make fun of me. Fear can come in a lot of different iterations. It can be fear of failure, fear of judgment. Oh, if people see me in that, see me doing that, then I've built up this reputation doing this other thing, and then they won't take me seriously. All of those stories that we tell ourselves. So it's really important to embrace the discomfort of dealing with that fear threshold and realizing that it doesn't have to be this big, huge thing, that you can take one small step towards whatever it is that you want to do and realize that, oh, okay, it's not that big, it's not that scary. It becomes more of a speed bump than a brick wall.
And you're working with women too, that it's almost like their second part of their lives because normally at that age, kids are out of the house. They have
Yeah.
more time for themselves. So, for someone listening, what are the steps they can take to start reclaiming their lives and doing what they want to do?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. There's so many things that they can do. But I think the first thing is to just appreciate where they are currently. And by that, if you've raised a family or you're at a certain level of your career, you had to do a lot of really amazing things to accomplish what you have so far. So give yourself a big high five, a big pat on the back, and say, hey, I have a lot of skills. So do an inventory of all of the things that, let's face it, raising kids is no joke, right? It's no joke. I don't have children, and that was by design. But there's so many things that go into that. It's like project management, right? Who's doing the carpool? Where are they going to be? And all this. There's so many skills that are, like you said earlier, I think transferable. And so do an inventory and say, okay, what are the skills that I already have? And then make a list of kind of the things that you're interested in or something that you've been wanting to do, but maybe felt like you haven't had the time. And then give yourself permission to do something for yourself. And also, and the other big thing is give yourself permission to be a beginner. I think that's really hard for people, especially women when we get to a certain age. They're like, I don't want to be a beginner. I don't want to stumble. I don't want to fall. I don't want to do all these things again. But yet I want to do something different. So I would say take inventory and then think about some things that you might want to explore and just be curious.
Yeah. And the thing too is like you can also take small steps.
Yes,
You know, you,
absolutely.
you don't have to become a pilot tomorrow
Right? Exactly.
unless
Exactly.
you want to.
Yeah. You can take a flight of like an introductory flight lesson, which is how I got started. I took an introductory flight lesson. And of course, then I'm like, I gotta be in here. I gotta, get my pilot's license. And then of course I had to buy a plane and I go to the extremes and you definitely don't have to do that.
Yeah. Now, what are your recommendations to reducing our stress? Or what do you find with your clients the reason for the stress in our lives?
I would say get out of your head. I think that we spend, especially women, we tend to not give ourselves the credit that we are due, right? That, like I said, you have to appreciate your skills and everything that you've done. And we have so many stories that keep us stuck and keep us in our place, right? So part of it, especially when I'm working with horses, is to start to build awareness. And part of that awareness is getting into your body. Because when you're around horses, if you're in your head and you're not fully present, it can be challenging. And that goes into life as well. If you're not fully present, and there's a lot of, we all talk about mindfulness and being present and all of that. And a whole lot of that is very somatic. It's being in touch with your body and what's going on. And when you are trying to do something new and you feel that fear or you feel that anxiety, it shows up in your body in certain ways. If you can start to ground yourself and be present, and when you feel something, try and determine its origin. It could be butterflies in your stomach. It could be pressure in your chest. It could be tingling in your hands. It could be whatever. So try and get in touch with your body. And that also works well just when you're in any situation. If you're in a tough situation and you don't like confrontation and you're in a confrontational position, take a deep breath and ground yourself and say, okay, what am I feeling? Before it actually comes out. So give yourself that moment to collect yourself, be present, and just settle into it. And I think a lot of times we can just get ourselves so spun up that we don't take that moment to figure out what's going on in our bodies before it gets up into our head, and then we just spin out of control. So I really do believe that if we are more present in our physical being, that can help a lot with regulating stress.
Yeah. And I find too that women our age, you've gone through the children, if I don't have any myself by design, but you've got so much on your plate,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it is not for yourself.
Yes.
And then once the children dissipate, it's like you're used to that kind of stress as well. But it's not focused on yourself because when you have children in a busy household and dogs and animals and people in the house, it's really hard to carve that time for yourself. Now, for women our age, are there any steps that we can take to make that transition easier?
For example, if you are transitioning from a career or from raising children or whatever, I think what all of those things that you said are wrapped up in that identity piece, right? Our identity is wrapped up in being the mom, being the caregiver, being the whatever. Or if we're in a career, our identity is wrapped up in that. Or if you're a business owner, your identity is wrapped up in that. And I think it's really difficult to the metaphor of being on a treadmill and you're on the treadmill and then all of a sudden it stops and you fall off and you're dizzy and you're whatever. You're like, whoa. So give yourself some time and give yourself some grace. And it's figure out why you feel so wrapped up in that identity and how you can get back to your actual self. So you can do some exercises to figure out what part of you is that identity and what part of you is the real you. And once again, a lot of that can come in by being in your body, being present, and slowly letting go of that other identity and figuring out what parts of that are no longer serving you so that you can go into a fresh mindset. Like I said, beginner mindset, fresh eyes. So having those kinds of things, like I'm not the mom. I'm still the mom. I will always be the mom, all right? Or whatever. Those children are always going to be there. They're always going to be mine. I raised them. I pushed them out of the nest. They're out there in the world now. I did a great job. But that's not the be all and end all. I started a business once. And then when I sold the business, I got to a point in my life where I'm like, okay, I just can't take it to the next level. So I ended up selling it. But for a very long time, so much of me, my physical being, my emotional being was wrapped up in the creation and the building of that business. And I had to take a minute and go through almost like the steps of grieving, right? Where I was like, okay, till I got to the point where I'm like, hey, that was an awesome thing that I did. I created that thing from scratch. And now I can take all of the pieces that I learned and go on and apply them to something new.
And that's the thing, we get so wrapped up in things that, yes, I love that analogy about the business because, yeah, we can create something, give it away, and we shouldn't lose our identity, but we feel like we do.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Now, when you work with horses, and is that intertwined with your coaching, or and how do you do that? Is that live, or can you do it online, or?
Yeah. So when I work with horses one on one or in a group setting, I do have retreats where we have up to, I usually partner with another equus coach, and we'll have up to 12 people at a retreat, which is 2 to 3 days of intense equine activities. Now, all the activities are on the ground, but typically I will work, some people will come either to my location, or I work with a couple of rescue facilities, and people will come to the facility and they work one-on-one with the horse with me. And the horse really is just acting as a feedback loop. The horse is just being itself. It's interacting with the person, and the person is interacting with the horse. And it's very telling, because a lot of times the horse will mirror what is really going on inside the person. And I can see that because I know horse behavior. And I watch that, and it gives me the opportunity to ask some really wonderful coaching questions because of what I'm observing. It's not like the person can just tell me whatever they want to tell me. I'm seeing real life feedback from the horse. And so if they're trying to tell me one thing, I'm like, okay, I can challenge them a little bit. So that's the one-on-one piece of it. With the actual horses. I do have online coaching as well, and I bring my intuitive knowledge that I have gained from being around horses for so many years into my one-on-one coaching with people. So I can tell, I can sense when people are not being congruent, and use those skills that I've gotten from the horses to dig a little bit deeper and get to the point a little bit more quickly.
That's funny. So the horses are basically the lie detectors.
Yeah, yeah, if you want to call it that. And people aren't necessarily lying. They just don't
Yeah,
know that they're doing that. And that's the cool part of it. And
you're
they
not
can,
authentic.
yeah. And the horses will call you on that. They'll also call you on if you don't have good boundaries, or you're not being a leader. Horses can be pushy. They need a leader. And if you don't exhibit leadership qualities or skills or whatever, they will take the lead. And sometimes that's not always the best option.
Now, what practical tools for stress reduction can you share with us today?
I have to go back to the horses a little bit. It's a lot of the same things that I spoke about earlier. Just taking a moment to get into your body. I think that is so important, and it's really overlooked. Like I said, things happen to us, situations, and if somebody flips you off in traffic or whatever, you want to ride up on their bumper. I'm from the East Coast, so we do a lot of that there. And what are you feeling? Try and figure out what you're feeling. Why did that one thing trigger you? So try and identify what triggers you the most. And when you do feel triggered, where is it in your body? Take that millisecond, take 5 seconds, even, whatever it is, and just take that deep breath, remove yourself from the situation, and be the observer. I think that is key. And I learned that in a Dharma study in a class, in a silent retreat, actually. That was challenging. And take that beat or 2 beats or 3 beats before you react. And that will help you get yourself grounded and centered, and help to reduce the stress. And I can't stress that enough, that if you're in your body, stress to me tends to be things that spin out in our heads. And we will feel it in our body before it actually spins off into some crazy story and some point of no return. So if we can get centered and be mindful in our own bodies, to me, that is what helps me the most.
That's the thing. People don't realize, like, just taking that pause is so
Mhm.
important. And we're so quick to react. And a lot of times, I know myself in the past, reaction time counted. When I was working in corporate stuff, you had to be on the ball, you had to be quick, and there was no time to pause. If you pause, the moment was gone. But nowadays, yeah, taking that time out and even saying, I need a moment, and just getting yourself together, just letting yourself process what's going on is really important. I find people are becoming more aware now.
Mhm.
And people are taking that pause. And that's one of the things that I strongly suggest. Anything like the minute you start feeling, as you said, stress and you feel it in your body, is take that pause.
Yeah.
Because if we let that go, it just leads to frustration. It just leads to anger. It leads to a lot of negative things that don't really need to happen once you
Yeah.
create that awareness.
Yeah. And if you, rather than push it down, and I have my clients, if something bubbles up in a session, and it always does, I ask them to sit with it. Just sit with it, because it's part of you. Our bodies hold so much stuff. Everything that's ever happened to us is embedded in our cells. So just be able to sit with it, like you said, even for a second, and don't push it back down. Because what happens is, my grandmother used to have this pressure cooker, this old school pressure cooker that she would make things on her stove, right? And it had this lid and it had this little thing on the top of it that she would periodically let it psh, 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 let the pressure out, right? Because if not, if you don't let the pressure out, guess what? Things either implode or explode. And it just is, we can only keep things in for so long. And I'm not saying explode on somebody, but just take a minute. And like you said, experience what you're feeling, and then take that minute rather than biting somebody's head off. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. It's not healthy for anybody, especially in
Absolutely.
the corporate world. That's for sure.
Oh, I've done it. I was a little bit of a hothead in my younger days.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I would punch walls. I had a big anger issue. And yeah.
So I understand you have a free 5-part email series. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's to help people take the crisis out of midlife. And it's just a really quick, do some videos in there, and it's just a little step by step. Every day you get a different email, and that email will give you an actionable item to be able to build a foundation for getting out of your comfort zone and exploring that next phase of your life, whatever that might be. So it's really fun. And I also refer to a couple of my podcast episodes where I've got some interviews. A friend of mine who is 72 years old and in a rock band. She's had this band for I don't know how many years, and they got the band back together, and she's out there kicking butt and taking names. And also, she's an artist. So it's some great examples of women of a certain age doing their thing and figuring out what that thing is. So it's meant to be inspiring and also give you some actionable steps.
Wonderful. And what's the name of your podcast?
A life worth being.
Perfect. I love that. Okay. So we're going to be wrapping this up. What are your final words of wisdom to the audience today?
I would say to approach every day with fresh eyes and be okay to be the beginner and just be curious and explore and find a new way of being.
Don't be afraid to try new things
Exactly.
because they're out there waiting for us to try.
Yeah.
Okay, so wherever you're watching or reading this, I will be putting Sue's information and her links. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask Sue the questions. Thank you so much for your time today, Sue. It was wonderful hearing from you. Great information. And I've always had a lot of respect for horses to start with. So
Yeah. Good for you. They're amazing creatures. They really are.
they absolutely are. Giving you a gentle reminder to slow down and enjoy life. And I will see you in the next episode.